There's a kind of desperation that only finds you in the cab of a truck at 3 in the morning, when the world is gone to sleep and the lukewarm coffee tastes like ash and regret. It's the desperation that comes when the bills are piling up like snowdrifts in a blizzard, coming in faster than you can haul, and you feel your whole life, everything you've built, about to jackknife on a patch of black ice. If we have no place to start, we have to build something. If there's no place to start, we have to build something. That was my life. 15 years of long hauling, of trading miles for dollars, and all I had to show for it was a bad back, a freightliner that was more rust than steel, and a stack of overdue notices that could choke a horse. That's where I was, staring at an online job board, the glow of the screen painting my face in the dark of my cramped apartment, looking for a miracle with a dollar sign attached. I wasn't just broke, I was broken. The road had taken everything from me. My marriage, my youth, my hope. This was the last stop before the end of the line. And then I found something else. The ad was sterile, almost aggressively plain. Private contractor seeking logistics personnel. Dedicated routes within the state of West Virginia. Exceptional compensation. Discretion is mandatory and non-negotiable. No company name, no logo, just a string of numbers for a contact. The pay they listed, it was the kind of money that felt like a typo, a cruel joke. More than a year's wages for what looked like a few months on the road. It was enough to not just catch up, but to get ahead, to get out. A sane man, a man whose truck wasn't 3 payments from being repossessed, a man who wasn't eating canned beans for the 3rd night in a row, would have called it a scam, a front for something illegal or worse. But I wasn't feeling sane. My sanity had been chipped away with every final notice and every call from a number I didn't recognize. With a sigh that felt like I was breathing out the last of my common sense, I sent the application. A short email, just my name, my CDL number, and my years of experience. Nothing else. The call came the next day. The voice on the other end was clipped, genderless, filtered through some kind of scrambler. It provided me with a time and an address for an office building that didn't appear on any map, located in a part of Charleston I was unfamiliar with. The interview wasn't an interview. It was an assessment, a weighing of my soul. I walked into a lobby that was completely empty, silent save for the hum of the fluorescent lights. A man in a government gray suit that seemed to absorb the light sat across from me in a room with no windows, no pictures, and no personality. The air was still and cold, like a walk-in freezer. He didn't ask about my safety record, didn't care about my 15 years of long-haul experience. He didn't even ask for a DOT-mandated drug test, the one part of any trucking interview you can always count on. His file on me was already open on the table. He knew everything. He knew about the foreclosure, the repossession notices, and my honorable discharge from the Army a lifetime ago. He only cared about 2 things, my time in the service and a single, chilling question. Mr. Davison? His voice was flat, emotionless, like the landscape of a dead world. Are you capable of following a direct order without question or hesitation, no matter how unusual or counterintuitive it may seem? I thought about the repossession notice sitting on my kitchen table, the stark red letters screaming at me. The rig was all I had left. It wasn't just a machine. It was my home, my livelihood, my last piece of a life that was slipping through my fingers. I thought about what it would feel like to lose it, to have nothing. To the letter, I said, the words tasting like metal in my mouth. He slid a set of keys across the cold, sterile table. They were heavy, old-fashioned. Next to them, a folded paper map, crisp and new, and a thick laminated card the size of a postcard. The truck is in lot 14. Your first route is on the map. This card. This is everything else. I picked up the card. It felt strangely heavy, cool to the touch. Operational Protocols, West Appalachian Exclusion Zone, it read in stark block letters. A numbered list followed. The rules, the man said. his eyes empty. Learn them, live by them. They are not guidelines, they are absolutes. We can replace the truck, Mr. Davison. We can replace the cargo, but you are difficult to insure. You follow the rules, you'll be fine. You deviate, and we will not be able to retrieve you. Whatever is left of you. And that was it. No W2S, no HR packet, no handshake. Just keys, a map, and a set of rules that were about to become the only thing standing between me and whatever lives in the old, dark, whispering hollows of West Virginia. The rig was an unmarked matte deck Peterbilt 389. It didn't look like a truck. It looked like a threat on wheels. A piece of the night that had been given an engine. There wasn't a single logo or chrome piece on it. The cab was packed with comms gear and electronics I didn't recognize, screens that stayed dark and dials that didn't move. My first load was a sealed, refrigerated container, already hitched. There was no manifest, no bill of lading, no lock for me to check, just a seamless white box. My destination was a set of coordinates deep in the Monongahela National Forest that, according to any official map, did not exist. Before I pulled out of the sterile, silent depot, I read the first rule again, the lamination cool against my thumb. Rule 1. Never, under any circumstances, stop for hitchhikers. This is especially true for children or for any individual whose eyes appear to glow in your headlights. I let out a short, humorless laugh. It sounded like a campfire story, some local ghost legend. West Virginia's full of them. Mothman? The Grafton Monster? Old tales to pass the time on dark nights? This was a job. A high-paying, strange job, but a job nonetheless. Still, the memory of the man's dead serious eyes stuck with me, a splinter in my mind. I set out as the sun bled out behind the Allegheny Peaks, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and purple. The 4-lane highway soon fell away to winding 2-lane blacktop, and the trees crowded in, their branches clawing at the sky like skeletal fingers. Darkness out here isn't just an absence of light. It's a heavy, physical thing, a smothering blanket of black. There's only the tunnel your headlights carve through the endless void. The silence was absolute, broken only by the diesel growl of the peat. I'd been on the road for a few hours, deep in the sleeping heart of the mountains. The road twisted like a dying snake, and as my headlights swung through a sharp turn, they caught her. A little girl, standing on the crumbling shoulder of the road. My foot slammed on the brake out of pure, trained instinct. The entire rig groaned in protest. A kid alone out here in the dead of night. It was wrong on every level. She couldn't have been more than 7, wearing a simple pale dress that looked like it was from another time, a faded photograph. Her hair was long and dark. She held a small hand out, a gesture that was less asking for a ride and more of a desperate plea. My truck slowed, the air brake sighing a long, mournful sound into the oppressive quiet. Every decent part of me, every shred of humanity, screamed to stop. Check on her, help her, a little girl. Maybe there was an accident. Maybe her family was in a ditch somewhere just beyond the trees. My hand was hovering over the button for the hazard lights. Then she lifted her head, her face moving into the full glare of the headlights. Her eyes weren't reflecting the light, they were the source of it. 2 soft, pale yellow orbs, shining with a gentle, internal luminescence. Like a cat's, but with no pupil, no iris. Just a steady, unblinking predatory glow that promised nothing good. Rule 1. The words hit me like a physical shock, especially for children, whose eyes appear to glow. My blood turned to ice water in my veins. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't a folk tale. This was real, and it was standing 10 feet from my bumper. The girl took a slow, shuffling step forward, her face a blank, emotionless mask. The plea in her posture vanished, replaced by a stillness that was utterly alien. My survival instinct, honed by years on the road and a lifetime of being wary, took over with violent force. My foot mashed the accelerator, and the Peterbilt's powerful engine roared, a defiant sound in the unnatural quiet. The truck surged past her, I risked a 1-second glance in the rearview mirror. For a moment, I saw her, standing perfectly still in the red wash of my taillights. Then, with a speed that wasn't human, she turned, not like a person, but like a doll being swiveled on a stand, and walked right into the black, impenetrable wall of the woods. The forest just seemed to open up and swallow her whole. My heart felt like it was trying to punch its way out of my ribs. The rest of the drive was a blur of adrenaline and terror. These weren't rules, they were survival instructions, and surviving this night was all that mattered. Hours later, my hands still shaking so badly I could barely grip the wheel, I found the unmarked turnoff. It led to a concrete bunker sunk into a hillside, almost invisible against the rock and trees. A silent guard, dressed in the same gray as the man from the office, scanned my truck with a strange device, then waved me to a loading bay carved into the earth. They took my trailer, the one I had just guarded with my life, and hitched up a new one. No words, no questions, no paperwork. Just a new map slid through a slot in the bulletproof glass, and a new destination. Driving out of those mountains, with the first hint of a sick gray dawn on the horizon, I tried to tell myself I'd imagined it. A trick of the light, an overtired mind playing games. But I knew what I saw. The serene, unnatural glow of those terrible eyes was burned into the back of my mind. The laminated card sat on the passenger seat, a silent, knowing accuser. I picked it up and read the next rule. Rule 2. If you hear tapping, scratching, or whispers from inside the cargo container, do not acknowledge them. Maintain your speed. The cargo must remain sealed until delivery. This one was worse. This one implied I was hauling something, not just equipment, not just supplies, something that tapped. My new container was another reefer unit, its refrigeration system humming a low, steady thrum behind me. The route was long, taking me east toward the Virginia border. For hours there was only the familiar sound of the engine and the tires on the pavement. I started to think maybe the last one was a test, a hazing for the new guy. Maybe this one was empty. Maybe I could just drive. The tapping started just after sundown. It was faint at first, tap, 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 barely audible over the engine, so light it could have been a branch brushing against the container. Just the refrigeration unit cycling, I told myself, my voice a strained whisper in the cab. Equipment shifting inside. Anything but the truth. I cranked up the radio, blasting an old country station until the speakers crackled, trying to drown it out. Tap, tap, tap. It was deliberate, rhythmic, a single, sharp sound, like a fingernail on the inside of a metal wall, growing louder, more confident. My knuckles were bone white on the steering wheel. Over the next hour, it got more insistent. A cold sweat ran down my spine, soaking the collar of my shirt. What in God's name was in there? Then the sound changed. It became a slow, grating scratch. Scree-ee. The agonizing sound of something sharp and hard trying to claw its way through solid metal. It was a patient sound, a determined sound. Then the whispering began. It was a sibilant hiss that seemed to crawl right through the wall of the cab, as if it were right behind my head. Too low to be words at first, just a venomous rustling sound, like snakes in dry leaves. Then it coalesced, weaving itself into a single sound, a single name, repeated over and over. My name. Clay. Clay. I slammed my foot down on the accelerator, trying to outrun the sound itself. A fool's errand. The scratching became a frenzy, a desperate, violent clawing. The whispers became a chorus, a dozen different voices all murmuring my name, some pleading, some angry, some mocking. I drove rigid with a terror I had never known, a prisoner in my own rig, a warden for a monster. Then, after an hour that felt like a lifetime, it all stopped. The sudden silence that followed was heavy, watchful, and somehow more terrifying than the noise had been. I didn't slow down. I was hauling something alive, something aware, and it knew my name. The job fell into a grim rhythm of dark roads, silent depots, and the ever-present laminated card. The rules were my only scripture in this new, terrifying world. Each trip was a new exercise in fear, a new test of my resolve. I learned to read the rules out of order, picking one that seemed relevant to the particular brand of strangeness a night offered. Rule 3. Do not, for any reason, leave the cab of your truck between 2:13 a.m. and 2:34 a.m. This is the witching window. If forced to stop, lock your doors, do not look in your mirrors, and do not respond to any stimulus. 21 minutes, so specific it felt insane. For weeks I planned my stops around it, timing my fuel breaks and rest periods with military precision, always ensuring I was either safely parked at a brightly lit populated truck stop or moving at speed on a major highway when that window opened. Luck runs out though. On this job, it felt like it was designed to. It ran out on a desolate stretch of Route 50, a road some drivers call the loneliest in America. The clock on my dash glowed a malevolent 2:09 a.m. Without a cough or a sputter, the engine died. The truck coasted to a dead stop. Total power failure. Every light, every gauge, everything went dark. The only thing with power was the small, battery-operated clock on the dash. 2:11 a.m. A cold, hard knot of panic coiled in my gut. It was probably a loose battery cable. A 5-minute fix if I had light and could get outside. My hand was on the door handle. Do not leave the cab. 2:12 a.m. 1 minute left. Was I going to sit here like a sitting duck because of some typed-up rule? I was a mechanic before I was a driver. I could fix this. Common sense battled with the stark, remembered terror of the glowing eyes. The clock ticked over, 2:13, and the world outside went utterly silent. The crickets, the wind in the trees, the faint hum of the universe, it all just stopped. A heavy, profound quiet that pressed in on the cab, making my ears pop. It was the sound of a held breath. My hand flew to the door lock. A loud thunk echoed in the deafening silence. Shaking, I stared straight ahead into the oppressive darkness. Do not look in your mirrors. A faint orange light appeared far down the road behind me, its reflection growing slowly on my hood. A torch, then another, then a dozen more. I heard footsteps in the dry leaves on the shoulder of the road, a slow, shuffling, dragging procession. They weren't walking, they were shambling. A shadow fell over my driver's side window. Something tall was standing right there. I could feel a spot of intense cold in the air right through the glass, a cold that leached the warmth from my skin. Knock, knock, knock. A polite, almost gentle tap on the glass. A voice, dry and thin like leaves skittering on pavement, spoke. Stranded traveler? Need a hand? I squeezed my eyes shut, my breath catching in my throat. Do not respond. The knocking got harder, more insistent. Canuck, Canuck. We know you're in there, another voice rasped, this one deeper, wetter, like mud being stirred. It's cold out here. Come out, walk with us, join the procession. From the passenger side, a child's laughter, high and thin and utterly horrifying. Then something sharp, like a claw, scraped a long, screeching line down the metal of the passenger door. I stared at the clock, my only anchor. 2:28 a.m. pouting. 6 more minutes. It felt like an eternity. The things outside grew frantic, their patience gone. The whispers rose to a cacophony of shrieks. The knocking evolved into a violent pounding that shook the entire 2-ton truck to its suspension. I felt a heavy weight groan onto the roof, and then a desperate, frantic scratching right above my head. They were trying to peel the cab open like a tin can. 2:34, it stopped. Instantly, all of it. The wind returned, the crickets began their song again, the night sounds rushed back in as if a switch had been flipped. I waited a long, long time before I moved. my body rigid with fear. When I finally found the courage, I glanced at my driver's side window. There on the glass, perfectly clear in the moonlight, was a single greasy handprint. It was too long to be human, with fingers that tapered to cruel, sharp points. With a trembling hand, I turned the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life perfectly, as if nothing had ever been wrong. I threw the truck in gear and fled, leaving that haunted stretch of road to whatever owned it for those 21 minutes of the night. The routes they gave me were never logical. They seemed designed to take me through the most forgotten parts of the state, down roads that hadn't seen fresh paint in decades. On one such night, chasing a delivery deadline in the Eastern Panhandle, I consulted the card again. There were rules on there that seemed so specific, so circumstantial, that I couldn't imagine how they came to be. Rule 11. If you approach a toll booth on a road that should not have one, do not stop. Do not make eye contact with the collector. Accelerate. A toll booth? Out here? The road was a crumbling two-lane mess, barely maintained. It made no sense, but the rules hadn't been wrong yet. I tucked the knowledge away, my unease growing with every passing mile marker. An hour later, I saw it. Up ahead, shimmering in my headlights, was the unmistakable structure of a toll plaza. It spanned the narrow, old and rusted road with a single booth in the center. A weak yellow light bulb glowed inside. This was impossible. This road went from nowhere to nowhere. There was nothing to pay a toll for. My gut screamed at me to slow down, but the rule was clear: accelerate. My foot pressed down on the pedal. The Peterbilt surged forward. As I got closer, I could see a figure inside the booth. A man, I thought. He was leaning forward, his face obscured by shadow, waiting. The wooden barrier arm was down, blocking the lane. I was doing 60, then 70. The engine was a deafening roar. The structure of the toll booth filled my entire windshield. I braced for impact. Just before I hit, the figure in the booth looked up. It wasn't a man. Its face was a pale moonlight disk, and from it sprouted a multitude of eyes, all different sizes, all swiveling to fixate on me. There was no mouth, no nose, just a cluster of black, unblinking orbs. And I saw a hand, long and spidery, reach out to a lever. I didn't give it the chance. I plowed through the flimsy wooden barrier arm, which exploded into splinters. For a fraction of a second, as my cab passed the booth, I risked a glance. The thing was pressed against the glass, all of its dozens of eyes wide with what looked like frustration and rage. It slammed a multi-jointed fist against the window. Then I was past it, rocketing down the empty road. I looked in my rearview mirror. The toll booth was gone. There was nothing behind me but the dark, empty asphalt. It had been there just for me. A trap, a filter, and I wondered what would have happened if I'd stopped. What kind of toll would that thing have exacted? The job was wearing me down, grinding away at my sanity like sandpaper on softwood. The line between the road and the nightmare was getting thin, Lurie. I started paying more attention to the smaller, odder rules. Those that seemed less about immediate threats and more about maintenance. Personal protection. Rule 9. Always keep the issued silver coin in your pocket when you are in the vehicle. Never lose it. It is keyed to you. It was a heavy, worn 1922 silver dollar. The details were soft from a century of handling. Folktales say silver is a ward against evil. Out here, in the heart of Appalachia, you start to believe in the wisdom of folktales. Its constant, heavy weight in my pocket was a small, solid comfort, a reminder that something in this world was still real. I was on a long daylight haul, the sun a welcome change from the endless nights. I felt almost normal. I decided to read another rule while cruising down the interstate. Rule 4. If you see a second version of yourself in any of your mirrors, do not make eye contact. Do not turn to face the passenger's seat. To acknowledge its presence is to validate its existence. the stuff of cheap horror movies. The product of an exhausted, sleep-deprived mind, I told myself. A psychological trick to test my focus. I glanced at my passenger side mirror to check my lane before a pass, and I saw myself sitting in the passenger seat. It was me. Exactly me. Same worn flannel shirt, same 3-day stubble on my jaw, same tired lines around my eyes. But the expression, he, the other me, was looking at my reflection in the mirror and smiling. It wasn't my smile. It was a predator's grin, vicious, knowing, and full of terrible ancient knowledge. It was the face of a man who had never felt regret or fear, only hunger. Do not make eye contact. My head started to turn, an overwhelming, magnetic urge to look at the seat beside me, to face the impossible thing wearing my face. My neck muscles tensed, fighting my own volition. I had to see. I had to know. My eyes began to slide from the mirror to the cab. My hand, acting on its own, shot into my pocket, closing around the silver dollar. It was hot, searing hot, like it had been sitting in a fire. The jolt of pure pain snapped me back from the brink. I jerked my head forward, locking my eyes on the white lines of the highway. I could feel his gaze on the side of my face, cold and heavy like a slab of granite. I could still see the smiling imposture in my peripheral vision. "I'm you," it seemed to say without a sound. "I'm the you that could be, the one who enjoys this, and I'm stronger." The silver coin grew hotter and hotter, a point of pure fire against my thigh, an anchor to reality in a sea of madness. The smell of scorched denim filled the cab. The grin in the mirror faltered, twisting into a furious snarl of frustration. It knew it was losing. I drove for what felt like hours, my hand clenched around the burning coin, my knuckles white. Finally, the intense heat began to fade, leaving a dull, throbbing ache. Cautiously, heart hammering, I flicked my eyes to the mirror. The seat was empty. I pulled over onto the shoulder, my body shaking with violent tremors. I took the coin out of my pocket. A dark, ugly tarnish spot marred its surface. A smoky thumbprint burned into the silver, as if it had absorbed the very essence of the thing that sat beside me. The rules weren't just a list. They were an intricate, interconnected system. And the coin wasn't a good luck charm. It was a shield. The isolation on the road is a crushing, tangible weight. The radio is more than entertainment. It's a lifeline to the human world. But like everything else in this new life, even that came with a warning. Rule 5. If the radio inexplicably turns to static and you hear voices whispering your name, turn it off immediately. They are trying to find a way in through the signal. It seemed to work in tandem with another, equally unsettling rule. Rule 7. If your company-issued GPS suddenly reroutes you to an unmarked or unpaved road, ignore its instructions and consult your paper map. It is luring you. I was deep in the southern hollers of the state, a place where fog clings to the roads like a shroud and cell service is a ghost. My only guides were the company GPS and my paper map. The country music I'd been listening to for an hour dissolved into a harsh, biting hiss of static. And from the depths of that white noise, a voice, a mere thread of sound, emerged. Cold dread, sharp and familiar. I slammed the power button on the radio. Silence. At that exact moment, the GPS unit spoke, its synthesized voice jarring in the quiet cab. Rerouting, due to unexpected road closure, in a quarter-mile, turn right onto an unpaved road. I glanced at the screen. A new route glowed, a thin line turning off the state highway into what my paper map showed as a solid, unbroken forest. A trap. The GPS chimed again, insistent. Turn right. I kept driving straight, my grip on the wheel tightening. You have missed your turn, the GPS said, its voice now laced with a strange, tight quality, an electronic annoyance. Recalculating. The radio clicked back on by itself. The static was louder now. The whispers were clearer. A chorus of them, all hissing my name from the speakers. Clay, listen to us. You're so tired, Clay. The road is so long. We can help you rest, just a short detour. In 200 feet, make a sharp right turn, the GPS commanded. Its voice was sharp now, imperious. Then the voice changed entirely. It was no longer a machine. It was a woman weeping with a terrible, inconsolable sorrow. Please, it sobbed through the small speaker. Please turn here. My little girl, she wandered off into the woods. She's lost in the fog. She's wearing a pale dress. She's all alone. Please, you have to help me find my little girl. It was an echo of the creature on the road, a lie woven from my own fears and my own lingering guilt. With a guttural growl, I ripped the GPS unit from its magnetic mount and threw it onto the passenger floor. The whispers from the radio continued, relentless, the woman's sobs mixing with the sibilant hissing of my name. I was functionally blind in the thick fog, being harassed by my own technology. It wanted me in those woods. It wanted me badly. I drove on for miles, navigating by the dim light of my phone's flashlight on the paper map, one hand on the wheel, the other holding the light steady. When I finally hit a main state highway and broke out of the dense fog bank, the radio went silent. The cab was blessedly, beautifully quiet. The things out here weren't just mindless monsters. They were hunters, and they were getting clever. The paranoia became my constant companion. Every shadow, every flicker of light, every strange noise was a potential threat. It led me to another rule, one that felt crueler than the rest. Rule 13, you may encounter other company drivers on your route. They will not acknowledge you. Do not attempt to communicate with them. Do not attempt to assist them if they are stopped or in distress. They are decoys or they are already lost. The company trucks were unmistakable. All Matt Peterbilts, identical to mine. I'd seen them a few times, passing like silent ghosts in the opposite direction on the highway. No wave, no flicker of the lights, no radio chatter, just two ships passing in the night. One night, on a twisting mountain road, I saw one. But it wasn't passing. It was in a ditch, tilted at a dangerous angle, its headlights pointing uselessly at the sky. The driver's side door was open, swinging gently in the breeze. A sick feeling settled in my stomach. This was one of us, another poor soul trying to make a living in this nightmare. The universal code of the road is, you always stop. You always help a fellow driver. It's an iron law. I slowed my rig, my mind racing. Rule 13, they are decoys, or they are already lost. Was it a test? A trap? Or was some guy just like me, with bills to pay and a life to lose, hurt inside that cab? Maybe he'd swerved to avoid something. Maybe his engine had died during the witching window. I pulled to a stop about 100 yards away, my headlights illuminating the scene. I grabbed my flashlight, my heart pounding a heavy, conflicted rhythm. I had to check. I couldn't just leave him. That wasn't who I was. As I climbed down from my cab, the cold night air hit me. The silence was profound. No sound came from the crashed truck. "Hello?" I called out, my voice sounding weak. "Driver, you okay in there?" No answer. I walked closer, my boots crunching on the gravel shoulder. The sense of wrongness grew with every step. The truck in the ditch, it looked too perfect. The angle was severe, but there was no broken glass, no sign of impact, no skid marks on the road. It was as if it had been placed there gently. I reached the open door and shined my light inside. The cab was empty, the driver's seat was pristine, and there on the passenger's seat was a laminated card, identical to mine. A cold chill that had nothing to do with the temperature crawled up my spine. This was wrong. All wrong. I started to back away. That's when I heard it, a soft chuckle from the darkness of the ditch just below the truck. I swung my flashlight beam down. Crouched in the shadows was a man in the same company-issued gray uniform as the depot guards, but his body was twisted, his limbs bent at unnatural angles. He was looking up at me and smiling, a wide predatory grin that was all teeth. And sitting next to him, holding his hand, was the little girl with the glowing eyes. "He stopped," the man in gray rasped, his voice a dry rustle. "He tried to help. A good Samaritan." The little girl giggled, a sound that curdled my blood. "He's with us now," she said in a sweet, clear voice. "He walks in the procession." My blood ran cold. Decoys. Or they are already lost. This driver was lost, and this was the trap to find the next one. I didn't wait to hear more. I turned and sprinted back to my truck, my lungs burning. I threw myself into the cab, slammed the door, and stomped on the accelerator, not even bothering to look in the mirror. I already knew what I would see, or rather, what I wouldn't. The truck in the ditch, the man, the girl. I knew they would be gone. The trap reset for the next driver who let his conscience get the better of him. The rules are warnings. Some are absolute ironclad laws. Rule 6. Under no circumstances are you to use State Route 17 on a Thursday. It didn't say why. It just said, don't. For months, I never had a reason to. My route skirted it, bypassed it, sent me the long way around. But one Wednesday night, my new orders came through from my handler. A disembodied voice I only knew as dispatch. The route put me squarely on a 50-mile stretch of Route 17. Thursday morning, an error. A major error. Dispatch called it when I questioned it. The drop-off is time-sensitive. There's no way around it, he finally said, his usually calm voice strained, tight with something I'd never heard before. Fear. You're going to have to proceed, but listen to me, Davison. Do not stop. For anything. You keep your foot on the floor until you are off that road, do you understand me? What's on Route 17? I asked, a chill running down my spine. Just drive, he said, and the line went dead. Thursday dawned gray and wet, a miserable, drizzling sky that bled all the color from the world. Route 17 was empty, utterly, unnervingly empty. No cars, no trucks, no signs of life, just wet asphalt disappearing into the mist. Then I saw them in my mirror. Headlights. A lot of them. A convoy of old 1,970 Sarakow Camovetrix trucks, rusted and identical, moving fast. They fanned out behind me, a perfect predatory formation, boxing me in. As they drew closer, I could see into their cabs. They were empty. Steering wheels turning on their own, gears shifting with no one there. This was what the next rule warned about. Rule 8. If you encounter a convoy of trucks that appear identical and lack drivers, do not attempt to communicate. Do not join their formation. They are not what they seem. They were hurting me. One of them drifted into my lane, trying to force me onto the soft shoulder. I floored it, but the phantom trucks matched my speed effortlessly, their engines making no sound, just the hiss of tires on wet pavement. One pulled ahead of me and slammed its brakes. I stomped on my own, my trailer jackknifing with a scream of tortured metal and smoking tires. They were playing with me, tormenting me. Dispatch's words came back to me, do not stop. I took a deep breath, aimed for a narrow gap between two of them, and hit the gas. The massive chrome grille of my Peterbilt slammed into the corner of a phantom trailer. There was a shriek of tearing metal, but no real impact. It was like hitting smoke and rust and memory. My cab was filled with the overpowering stench of decay, ancient dust, and cold earth. For a moment my vision swam and I saw a flash of a different time. A driver in a denim jacket, his face a mask of terror, screaming as his rig went over a guardrail. I was driving through a ghost, an echo of a tragedy. And then I was through. I didn't dare look back. I could hear their horns, a mournful, discordant wail that followed me for miles. the sound of ghosts crying out in anger that their prey had escaped. I was running on fumes, both diesel and fear. Months of this had worn me down to a raw nerve. My destination was a dilapidated, collapsing warehouse at the edge of a forgotten town. I backed up to the loading dock, the quiet of the place unnerving. As I climbed down from the cab, my legs unsteady, the last rule came to mind. Rule 10. Your delivery point is your most vulnerable moment. The receptionist will greet you by your full name and present you with company credentials. If the individual who meets you will not make direct eye contact, do not unhitch the trailer. Get back in your truck and leave immediately. A tall, gaunt man in greasy, torn overalls emerged from the deep shadows of the loading bay. He was unnaturally still, his movements jerky and wrong. "Got the delivery for Davison," I said, my voice hoarse. I kept my eyes on his, trying to force the contact. He just nodded, his eyes fixed on the ground about 3 feet to my left. He gestured with a long, pale hand at the trailer hitch, a silent command. My stomach dropped into my boots. "Need to see your credentials, partner." No response, just a thin, humorless smile touching his lips. He took a step toward the back of the truck, his gaze still averted. "There's something I should get you." "Like what?" "He won't make eye contact." "Right," I said, my voice tight, trying to sound casual. "Let me just get the final paperwork from the cab." I turned and walked, didn't run. Every step was a mile. The back of my neck prickled, expecting a hand to grab my shoulder, to feel long, sharp fingers digging into my flesh. I reached the cab, hauled myself in, slammed and locked the door. The engine roared to life with a turn of the key. I looked back at the dock. The man was still standing there, but he'd lifted his head, and he was looking right at me. His eyes were solid black orbs, glistening, depthless like a shark's. His smile was no longer thin. It was a wide, grotesque slash of a mouth, filled with pointed needle-like teeth. From the blackness of the warehouse behind him, more of them emerged, a dozen figures, all with the same pale faces and dead, black eyes. They weren't human. They were things wearing human skin. I slammed the truck in gear and tore out of that yard. The trailer with its whispering, scratching cargo still hitched behind me. I had failed the delivery. But I was alive. For now, in this world, that was the only victory that mattered. I drove all night, fueled by adrenaline, all the way back to the nondescript depot where it all began. The man in the gray suit was waiting for me, standing by the door, as if he knew I was coming. "You failed to complete the delivery," he stated. It wasn't a question. "Receiver was compromised," I said, my voice ragged. "Protocol 10 was invoked." He stared at me for a long moment, his unblinking eyes seeming to search for something deep inside me. He wasn't looking for truth, he was looking for weakness, for cracks. He must have found something he could still use because he gave a single, curt nod. "Acceptable losses. The cargo has been rerouted. Your payment has been wired. Your next assignment is in 48 hours. Rest." I walked out of that office into the gray morning light, the money already in my account feeling like a lead weight in my gut. It wasn't a wage. It was a bribe. It was hazard pay for my soul. I know too much to quit now. I know what haunts Route 17 on Thursdays. I know what happens during the witching window. I know not to help a brother in a ditch. You don't just walk away from a job like this. You are a part of the secret, and the secret holds on to you. I'm in a cheap motel room now, the hum of the ice machine the only sound. The laminated card is on the nightstand. Its edges are frayed, the corners soft from being handled in terror. It's the only thing keeping me alive. But as I look at it, a new, colder fear takes hold. Worse than anything I've faced on the road. There are 10 rules on this card that I know of. 10 commandments for survival in a land of monsters. But I've seen things, felt things, that aren't on this card. What about the rest stops that feel too quiet, where the shadows in the corner of your eye seem to move? What about the specific brand of fog that seems to deaden all sound? What about the animal carcasses on the side of the road that are arranged in deliberate, geometric pattern? There are no rules for those. Not yet. The card itself is the source of my new dread. There are 15 numbered slots. 5 of them are blank. Waiting. I have to wonder what's still out there in the dark. What other horrors exist that are so terrible they haven't been survived long enough to warrant a rule? I wonder how many drivers it took before they knew about the girl with the glowing eyes, or the phantom convoy, whose final terrified moments became the ink on my card. And I have to wonder if I'll be the one to find the thing that warrants Rule 12 or 14. I have to wonder if I'll be around long enough for them to write a new rule in my name. Thank you for listening. If these stories from the shadowed roads mean something to you, consider joining our circle. There are always more tales to tell from the places that lie just beyond the map. Let me know in the comments which rule you'd least want to follow. Stay safe out there.